Alright, so in this video we're going to be looking at the pink section of your Rainbow Review, and there's not a whole lot of math here. This is basically just, do you understand some of the vocabulary and some of those basic concepts that we started out with the beginning of the chapter. So again, no math really involved here. So for the first question here, we just have to determine whether or not each of these represent a statistical question. Now remember, it's basically a statistical question is anytime you have a question that can be answered by collecting data that will vary. And so when they ask you how many days are in September, that's just a factual question. There's 30 days in September. That's not asking you a question where the numbers are gonna vary. It's not gonna change. Do football coaches generally get paid more than swimming coaches? Again, that is not a statistical question. Now, if they ask the question of coaches in general, asking them specifically how much money do you make in a year, then that would be something that would be a statistical question, because then you can compare maybe the football coaches and swimming coaches and use that data to compare and figure out who gets paid more. But just asking this question specifically, that is not a statistical question. And then lastly, what is the average number of TVs owned by Edina residents? That would be a statistical question, because then each one would vary by how many TVs are in each home. All right, so then this one too, again, dealing with some vocabulary. It says Mr. Beaton surveys 100 Edina students to find the favorite color of Edina High School students. Of the students surveyed, 53% said green was their favorite. What is the population in this scenario? So in this scenario, we're not looking at all the students in the state of Minnesota. We're not even looking at all students in Edina. We're looking specifically at just the Edina High School students. Would be the population, and the sample is specifically out of all those students at the high school, the 100 students that Mr. Beaton surveys. And is your favorite color a qualitative or categorical, or a quantitative variable? And it would be a categorical, because again, it's not giving a number as a response, it's giving a category as far as a color as a response. And is 53% a parameter or statistic? Well, that would be a statistic because it describes a sample of the population. That's what a statistic does. It's describing a sample of the population. All right, so that's the front side. So let's look at the back side of this pink section. So for number 3, we're determining whether or not these represent an experiment, an observational study, or a sample study. So I'll just make this simple. I'll just do E for experiment, O for observation, and S for sample survey. So for letter A, it says, is the lifespan of giraffes affected by the number of offspring they produce? Okay, so that you're not doing an experiment, you're not doing you're not surveying the giraffes, you're making a observational study here. So that would be O, observational study. Do employees at a company want vending machines with healthy snacks? Well, the only way to find that out would be to do a survey, and so this would be a sample survey question. The last one is, adding eggshells to the soil affect the productivity of tomato plants? Well, that would be, again, the only way to do that would be by doing an experiment. So it would be an experimental study. Okay, two types of sampling methods have a high risk of bias? Well, if you look back in your notes, again, a lot of this is just making sure that you take good notes and are using those notes effectively. So before the test, if you don't have good notes, half the test is going to be based on just this terminology. So if you don't have this information in your notes, it's going to make that part of the test, which is really meant to be easy, rather difficult, or more likely to make little mistakes that can cause you to lose some points. We don't want that. So if you look back in your notes, there's 2 types of sampling that have a high risk of having bias, and that would be convenient sampling and self-selected sampling. All right, when conducting an experiment with a new drug, a group is given a placebo. Is this group the control group or the experimental group? And if you're not familiar with what a placebo is a fake, if you're doing a drug study, it'd be a fake drug. Like maybe, for example, my daughter was in a drug study, and So we didn't know if she was given the actual drug for the study or the placebo. And those that were getting the placebo were just getting a sugar pill. So it wouldn't affect their body or immune system at all, where the actual drug would have. And so then after a certain time, everybody was given different tests and looked to see whether or not those that got the experimental drug had any different results than those that were getting the placebo. So the placebo is not the actual drug. And so that means that they are part of the control group. So a control group, they are not exposed to the drug, where the experimental group would be receiving the actual drug. All right. Ms. B chose every 5th student and measured their height for a study of the heights of students at Edina High School. What type of sampling method did she use? All right, so in this scenario, since they're just taking every 5th student as they come into the school, that would be systematic. And looking at number 7, it says Ms. G divided her class into groups by their hair color, then chose 1/4 of the students in each group and weighed them. What type of sampling method did she use? So since she divided them up by color and then randomly selected out of those groups 1/4 of the students in each group and weighed them, this would be a situation that would be stratified. So hopefully that answers all your questions that you may have had from this first section, which deals with just vocabulary.